The counteroffensive in Ukraine is going to plan. That's according to Ukraine's president. But 1 month into the country's renewed fight to take back territory seized by Russia, that may be the case. It is not without a hefty cost. With overwhelming amounts of injuries and deaths, the front line in Ukraine is a bloody and war-torn battlefield as the country's soldiers push ahead in their efforts to repel Moscow's forces. An incredible team of producers, cameramen, and our own Ian Pannell were there on the front line to bring you this story, Ukraine's counteroffensive 1 month in.
The war in Ukraine has never been more brutal, bloody, and violent. A counter-offensive launched a month ago to drive Russian troops from Ukraine. But this is what it takes to simply reclaim the land that's already theirs. It's just been a few weeks since Ukraine began its long-anticipated campaign. American-made Bradley infantry vehicles, soldiers from the 47th Brigade, crossing into Russian-held territory, meeting fierce resistance. Also on the southern front, a tank unit from the 35th Brigade, advancing, firing on Russian positions. But Russia's army has had all winter to prepare its defenses, the process slow and dangerous.
We've come to the village of Novosilka, which was the front line up until the start of the counter-offensive, and this is where it began. Now, most of the armaments, most of the American fighting vehicles have now moved forward, but you can hear the sound of battle in the distance. There's a very eerie calm here. Only a handful of residents have stayed behind.
At the onset, Ukrainian forces launched a counterattack on 3 points in the south, from Orohiv, Velika Novosilka, and Vuhledar. But every square mile has had to be fought over to claw back. After a lightning offensive last fall retook hundreds of square kilometers of land in a matter of days, expectations were unrealistically high among some allies and commentators that it could be repeated. To some, it looked like this new month-old counter-offensive was now off to a poor start, some even fearing it could fail. With the land heavily mined and Russia firing tens of thousands of shells every single day, the Ukrainians were taking heavy losses of men and equipment. Vladimir Putin crowing, taunting the Ukrainians about their losses, speaking to Russian military reporters just 10 days into the counter-offensive.
Ни на одном из участков противник успеха не имел. У них большие потери. И структура у них потерь. Такая для них неблагоприятная. Что я имею в виду? Но вот из всех потерь они приближаются к оценке, которые можно назвать катастрофическими.
But the Ukrainians say that what we're seeing now is shaping and probing to get Russia to reveal its defenses, and that the main thrust has yet to come. The land near Velika Novosilka is where Ukraine has made most progress, liberating a string of villages. In the surrounding countryside, a French artillery weapon fires towards Russian positions just a few miles away.
Good morning, Ian.
As we spoke to local volunteers, the silence shattered by the roar of fighter jets overhead.
Whoa, whoa. See, there are Ukrainian fighter jets flying incredibly low. So you can see the flares that are going off in the sky to try and deter any kind of Russian attacks. They're heading over to Russian positions. A Russian front line used to be here. It's now moved probably about 7 or 8 miles down the road. But this is where the counter-offensive is at its most intense.
We advance further towards the front lines. where large swaths of territory have been razed to the ground. Abandoned. Not a home, not a life, untouched by Russia's invasion.
You see the signs of war everywhere around you. That's a Ukrainian armored vehicle moving towards the front lines, only around a couple of miles or so. Up until 3 weeks ago, this was Russian-occupied territory, and the flag that's now flying on top of the building tells you that this has now been liberated by Ukraine.
We met a tank crew from the 35th Marine Brigade resting nearby and asked them if the counter-offensive was going slower than hoped.
Всі працюють, але всі бачать і хочуть бачити все зразу, але так не буває. Це війна і це стратегія.
But without air support, it's coming at a terrible price. Many have been killed, others live to fight another day, but thousands end up here. Their fight on the battlefield is over. Now they must fight just to stay alive. Every corridor, every ward,
Problem.
every bed tells a story here.
Today, nice.
The staff at this trauma hospital have cared for thousands of wounded warriors, and yet day and night they still come, and almost all have the same type of injuries.
Wood, it's shrapnel, yes.
A shrapnel in the leg.
Yes.
The gruesome scans tell a simple and terrible story.
Bullet 2%.
Bullets 2%, and all the rest is
Yeah,
shrapnel
only shrapnel.
from artillery,
Yes.
mortars.
Yes.
Of 2,000 trauma operations at this hospital this year, almost half are amputations. We watched a slow, agonizing operation as a young soldier, badly wounded when he stepped on a Russian mine, had his leg sawn off above the knee.
Dozens of badly wounded soldiers are now being brought out of the hospital. They've come in with terrible wounds. They've now been stabilized and have been taken for further medical care. Every single day, a fleet of 40 ambulances comes to this spot to carry out this routine.
We met a crew of international medics helping to evacuate patients from the hospital.
There's severely injured patients, and you know, it's tough to see.
We don't have these types of injuries in Norway or anywhere else in the West, perhaps. So, yeah, there's torn off limbs, torn off, severe injuries. That's difficult to treat.
Despite the slow pace, the counter-offensive is making real strides. You can see the territory reclaimed in the south and the east, but it takes time, lives, and firepower.
Hello.
We moved to the Eastern Front, where we were given rare access to American-supplied long-range howitzer artillery guns. The men of the 45th Brigade blasting Russian positions near Bakhmut in the east, where Ukraine says gains are now being made.
They've just got new coordinates, so they're getting ready to fire again. It's incredibly powerful. It's not just a sound. You can feel like the shockwave. You can feel it deep inside your chest. They're telling us, cover your ears, keep your mouth open to try and balance the pressure.
The city was finally taken by Russia after a long, brutal fight throughout the winter that left Bakhmut shattered. But having declared victory, Putin's men are now losing ground to the north and south of the city as Ukrainian forces push on the flanks. In the trenches around the city, Ukrainian infantry troops advance through Russian lines, trying to encircle Putin's men in the city and raising a prospect that was unthinkable a few months ago, that they might recapture it. It's some of the most violent and dangerous fighting this conflict's seen. In truth, Russia never controlled 100% of the city. And every few days, the men of the 5th Brigade risk their lives to hold on to a couple of blocks or so of territory there. We sat down with them during a brief break from the front lines. None of these men had any military experience until February last year, when Russia launched its large-scale invasion. Today, they're battle-hardened, determined, but also keenly aware of the lives that have been lost.
Do you get used to death? Do you get used to the possibility of death?
На жаль, так. На жаль, так. Важко з цим змиритися, але доводиться. Доводиться розуміти, що ти кожної секунди, кожної миті маєш загинути.
Ну, але ми точно знаємо, що ми переможемо. Тобто ми точно знаємо, що перемога буде за нами. Але якби нам більше зброї, такої зброї, було б менше жертв. На жаль, контрнаступ дається важкою ціною Україні.
This is the cost of the war for the young men and women of Ukraine, as they risk everything just to liberate their land. One day, one trench, one grave at a time.
And no doubt a long road still ahead. Our thanks to Ian and our entire team over in Ukraine.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.